Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're getting into some fantastic, hard-won lessons on a problem that, let's be honest, a lot of us are wrestling with. How do you build LLM tools for really specialized engineering fields that people will actually use? It's all about getting past the cool demos and creating real-world value. Okay, let's just start here, because this says it all, doesn't it? We have all seen the slick demos, but the reality is, just slapping a chat box on something and calling it a day, well, that almost never works. There is a massive canyon between a flashy proof of concept and a tool an engineer is going to bet their time and reputation on every single day. So that really is the million-dollar question. How do you bridge that gap? And the answer, it turns out, isn't some magic bullet. It's a series of really practical lessons learned from being in the trenches, building these things. So think of this as your field guide.
Here's our game plan. We'll start with a promise versus the kind of messy reality, then walk through the three key phases: the foundation, the build, and the launch. And we'll wrap it all up with a few guiding principles to keep in your back pocket.
First up, let's just set the stage. The promise of LLMs is, well, it's huge. The idea that they can reason about complex problems and just vaporize tedious work is incredibly exciting. But the messy reality is that a successful project is rarely just about the model. It's all about how you frame the problem, how you design the workflow, and how you actually integrate it into how people already work. So let's talk about phase one, the foundation. And I gotta say, so much of a project's success or failure is decided right here, long before a single line of code ever gets written. And the very first lesson is, you have to fight the urge to just throw an LLM at every single problem. Not everything needs one. If you can solve 80% of your problem with a dead simple rule, start there. LLMs are amazing, but they're also kind of slow, they can be expensive, and they're non-deterministic, which just means you can ask the same question twice and get two slightly different answers. That makes them a really poor choice for any job that needs lightning speed and perfect consistency. Now, this next point is all about psychology, and it is so important. From the very first conversation, you have to frame your tool as an ally that helps an expert, not as an automation tool that replaces them. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. When a tool feels like a threat, any little mistake it makes is proof that your AI failed. But when it's an assistant, even a suggestion that's not quite right can be seen as, that's an interesting insight. The whole dynamic just flips. So how do you actually build that alliance? Well, you co-design. And that's just a fancy way of saying you sit down with the experts, the people doing the job, and you ask them, hey, what does better actually look like for you? Is it about saving time on triage? Is it about reducing false alarms? You have to define success in their language. That process, all by itself, builds an incredible amount of trust. Okay, so with that solid foundation in place, we can move into phase two, the build. And the big theme here is really simple, but it's powerful. You have to design for trust and for control. It is so tempting to just build the autopilot system, a single magical get answer button that does everything behind the scenes. We all want to build that. But in the real world, this almost never works for domain experts. And why is that? Because they're used to systems where they understand how things work and how they can fail. A black box, even a brilliant one, is just not trustworthy. And that's why the Copilot model is so much more effective. Instead of doing everything at once, the system works in stages, and it gives the human clear points of control. So the LLM might suggest, hey, here's how you could group these alarms, but then it stops. It waits for the human expert to look it over, maybe make a few changes, and give the thumbs up. Only then does it move on. That sense of control is absolutely everything for getting people to adopt your tool. This brings us to another key idea. Start with workflows, not autonomous agents. I know, agents sound way cooler, right? But they can be random and really hard to debug. A well-defined workflow, on the other hand, is predictable. It's easy to understand, and most importantly, it matches the expert's own mental model for how they would solve the problem. And that leads us to maybe one of the most important technical tips in this whole explainer. You have to shift how you think about LLMs. Don't treat them like a magic box where it's just text in, text out. To get reliable, production-ready results, you have to think structure in, structure out. And this slide shows exactly what that means in practice. You don't just feed the LLM a messy, raw text report. No, you clean it up first. You parse it into a clean, structured format, like JSON. And then, on the other side, you force the LLM to give you its answer back in that same strict structure. This one discipline, structure in, structure out, will make your entire system dramatically more reliable and easier to debug. All right, let's get into our final phase, the launch. Because look, it doesn't matter how amazing your tool is, if nobody uses it, it has zero value. The launch isn't the finish line, it's really where the hard work begins. So if you want people to adopt your tool, you absolutely have to meet them where they already are. Don't build yet another website they have to remember to log into. Instead, embed your features right inside the tools they already use all day. Maybe it's a little side panel in their monitoring dashboard with a few helpful buttons like Summarize or Explain this. And please, for the love of all that is holy, automatically pass the context. Don't make your users copy and paste. An evaluation, well, it's not a one-time thing you do at the end. It is an ongoing process of building trust. First, your system has to be transparent. It needs to show its work, cite its sources, explain its reasoning. Then, you have to actually sit down with your experts, run real-world scenarios through the tool with them, and ask them to just think out loud as they use it. The feedback you get from that is pure gold. So as we look back on all of these field notes, you start to see three really powerful principles emerge, and you can pretty much use these to guide any LLM project you work on. Here they are. First, respect the domain expertise, period. Always, always keep the human expert in the driver's seat. Second, remember to engineer the entire system. The LLM is just one piece of a much bigger machine. And finally, number three, treat deployment as the beginning of your journey, not the end. It's your first, best chance to have a real conversation with your users. And that really leaves us with this final thought. When you reframe your goal, when you shift from trying to automate a person's job to trying to augment their skills, from replacing an expert to empowering them, it just unlocks a whole new universe of possibilities. It's a more collaborative, more effective, and honestly, a more human way to build things. So, what will you build?